Hey guys, I'm Pacey Cervantes, new in Nashville with my buddy Redferrin. I'm sorry, did I say it
What
right?
you
Because
know good. Yeah,
some
you
people
said it
are
right for
saying,
sure.
okay,
Yeah,
good.
red, fair, in. You got it right on the money.
Okay, perfect. So, I mean, that's, I thought that was a stage name, but it turns out that's your last name, right?
Yes, sir. It's just my last name. I never really been an alter ego guy. I couldn't think of nothing cool that I wanted to stick with, so we just went by my last name. There's
Is
already a big Blake you think of. When you hear Blake, you usually think Blake Shelton, but there ain't a
yeah.
red yet, so I reckon that's gonna be good for me.
Is there a specific is there any historical context with that last name? Does it come from a specific country or anything?
You know, I honestly can't speak on it for sure. Growing up, my grandfather believed that it was Native American, but I've never done any of that 23andMe or nothing, so I ain't got a clue. I just know I'm Redferrin. That's about as far as I know.
I love it. And I mean it's a pretty unique name, so that's good. So growing up, you were pretty much into dirt biking, right?
Yes, sir. That was my first dream, was to be a pro motocross rider. So I got to live it for a couple years, but I just kept getting hurt, man, and you can't make no money racing if you ain't racing. But yeah, dirt
Right.
bikes in my blood, man. I just did we got to play Angel Stadium last weekend at Supercross, and that was bucket list, man. Over 40,000 people. I got to ride out on my dirt bike. I mean, I could have raced my entire life and not got to do that. So it's I love my moto people, man.
Yeah, you're like doing things that you never like even thought you'd be able to dream of doing, right?
Yes, sir. I mean, honestly, I gave up on that dream when I quit racing, because they only let the top five guys in the world ride out there and ride a wheelie before the race starts. And like I said, I could have raced forever and never got to that point. So to be able to be a part of the show that I've watched for 25 years, and first musical act ever in 50 years of the sport. So it's kind of cool. I didn't really ever feel like I left a mark in the books, when I was racing, but I feel like I made a little history last weekend. So that was pretty awesome.
My God, I love that. So how did
Yeah,
dirt
man.
biking turn into making country music? Or were you kind of doing them at the same time?
Well, I've always been a songwriter. Even when I was racing, it was just something I did as a hobby, or we'd just play on guitars and make stuff up, and rap over beats, whatever we could find to make music, we would do it. But oddly enough, Tyler Hubbard built a motocross track in my hometown, and he invited one of my buddies to come ride, and they invited me. And then for a while we were just dirt bike friends. And one day he learned I did songwriting, and he's like, people write songs for a living 30 minutes south of here every day. So he introduced me to Brian, and they helped me break into the Nashville scene and hone the songwriting craft for a few years. So it's the weirdest wraparound way. I never would have figured I would have got there because of a dirt bike, but that's the only reason
Right.
I'm in this town doing what I'm doing, honestly.
I mean, that's fate then, it seems like, because you were just 30 minutes north of Nashville. Where is it? White House, Tennessee?
Yes, sir. White House. Yeah, I mean, my dad worked for Gibson growing up, so I knew that there was like some musical stuff here, but I thought it was just like record labels. I thought Aldine lived in Georgia, and I thought his band was from Georgia. Like, I just didn't know everybody. Had no clue that there was thousands of guitar players and writers and musicians. I just, until you don't know. So it was just like
Right.
I had no clue it was in the front yard.
Dude, that's so cool. Like being just 30 minutes north. So had you never been to Nashville before Tyler Hubbard came to you and talked to you?
I mean, we come down for Titans games, or we come down for like Nashville Sounds. We got a minor league team here. But other than that, man, it was just like barely far enough away. It's probably 45 minutes from where I live proper. And it was just barely far enough away. Like, there wasn't really Uber back then.
Right.
Everybody wanted to have a good time. If we did go out, we couldn't afford a hotel. So we kind of just stayed in the woods.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So your EP just dropped, Some City Somewhere. So how did you come about
Yes, sir.
writing that?
Man, last year when we were touring, I just ended up a whole lot of places that I'd never seen, experienced cultures I never experienced, heard languages I never tried to talk or read, and just I was experiencing so much so fast that it really inspired a whole batch of songs. And I was going through a lot of life changes at the time too, whether it be just growing as a man or relationship changes or whatever else. So there's a lot going on at home, and then I'm seeing a lot for the first time, and a lot of the songs kind of wrote themselves. Man, there's one called "Good Morning Montana," and I remember we was at a truck stop and somebody yelled "Good Morning Montana," and I was like, well,
I love that.
that sounds like a hook. So we got on there and wrote it, and then next day I'm like, where the hell are we? And, well, somewhere in the Rockies. So then we wrote "Somewhere in the Rockies," and yeah, so much of it was just honest, like reflections of what I was living and seeing and going through at the time. And sonically, I tried to push the boundaries and see how far I could go traditional or this or that, and it still feel like a Redferrin song. But
Yeah.
I'm pretty proud of this batch, man. I can't wait to share it.
I I and would you say that traveling around, because I think you said how you've been to like what 40 something countries or something like that?
Well, last year we did 6 countries and 42
Oh,
states, which is a whole lot
that's what
more
I
than I've ever seen. I didn't have a
right.
passport till last March.
So, do you find when you travel like that, being from, like, I would say a relatively small town in Tennessee, do you
Yes,
find that
sir.
we have more different, or do you find the more you travel, we actually all have more in common?
I think everybody has so much in common they can't. That's why they can't stand each other because we're all just alike.
Right.
Yeah, you know what I mean. People got to get over that stuff, man. Like we're all living the same experience. They might like a little more mustard on something in Germany than I do here, but I mean, it's
Right.
still, we all still doing the same thing, eating the same thing, wearing the same stuff. Like
Yeah.
I think it's a little scary at first because it's a different language or whatever. But once you're there a week, it kind of feels like home. Like I didn't
Yeah.
want to leave. I didn't want to leave London and Paris once I visited them, and I'm a country to the bones, man. But
Right.
it's you can find home anywhere if you spend long enough or if you look hard enough.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, did you like when you got back home, were you like, oh God, it's nice to be in my own bed?
Well, honestly, I'd been in hotel beds and the bus bed so long my bed felt weird. I couldn't settle in when I got home.
Yeah.
But yeah, for sure, man. I'm a creature of habit and I like having all my little comforts around, and when you're on the go like that, they're kind of hit or miss. So I definitely enjoy my time at home too, just as much as I do being out.
Yeah. And I mean, speaking of like being out of town and everything, so is this technically kind of your first headlining tour?
Yes, sir. Last year we did old number 7 tour, and that was the first time I ever headlined, man. And to see people show up like that, and see people care enough to know the words, and I don't know, it meant a lot. And when you see repeat offenders, you see somebody coming to 2 or 3 shows, you're like, hey, something must be fun here. Or they wouldn't be coming back. So little stuff like that really keeps me going. And I've been writing songs for 8 or 9 years here in Nashville, and to be out singing them and see the reactions instead of just hear about is pretty cool. Means a lot to me.
So is there anyone specifically that you haven't worked with so far, whether it's writing or, collaborating on a song with, that you're like, okay, if I can collaborate with this person, then I know I've made it. I'm good.
Oh man, I would say if I could get one out of Alan Jackson, if I could ever do a song with AJ, I could hang my hat and be proud, man. That's when I moved here, I begged my publisher to get me with every writer that wrote for him previously. I just wanted to learn from the people that wrote the songs I loved. So I know my stuff sonically is a little different, but the roots of it is traditional country songwriting. And man, to get somebody like that would be bucket list for me.
What's so funny? I just finished up talking to Zach Top, and he said the same exact thing. Alan Jackson, he is such an inspiration, huh?
Yeah, man, and I'd say old Zach's got a better chance than I do because he's a little more in that wheelhouse. But Lord, if we could all three do one, that'd be an answered prayer right there, man. I really love what Zach's doing too, because anybody that has done '90s country kind of sounding stuff, it just never sounded like AJ, and that sounds like that old stuff I love, man. So
Right.
yeah, I mean, I think for whatever reason, the guys, our age, that's what I was listening to the most because
Yep.
he had happy songs, he had sad songs, he had happy sounding sad songs. He
Yeah.
had, I mean, I don't think nobody picked better songs than him.
Right. And he was good. Like just his voice and his singing ability was so good at bringing out emotions in songs. Like you said, like happy, he had sad songs, he had happy sounding sad songs. Like his ability to create emotions in just 3 minute song is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things I ever heard him say in an interview that shaped the way I write was his label early on told him he couldn't only write sad songs, and that was his favorite at the time. So he started writing happy sounding sad ones. And I didn't realize how many of them songs of his that I maybe partied to really had a lot of heartache in them. And I think that's like, some of my stuff like Miss Summer or whatever, it might sound like a up tempo banger, but it's about missing a girl. So, you know,
Right.
I I've took a lot of pages out of that man's book, and I'm thankful for him. I hope he knows how much I appreciate him, man. He's the man.
I love that, man. So I just want to finish this off because I know that you have an insane life. You're writing, you're headlining your tour, you're visiting all these countries. Is that when you're out and about and you're just so busy, do you sit there and think, you know what, I got to take care of my mental health? And like, if you do, what are those things that you do that kind of keeps your sanity in check?
Man, mental health is a huge thing, especially being on the road. I think a lot of times you're going so fast and you're seeing new things that it's easy to be distracted and not ever take account of how you're actually feeling. And there's not a lot of time to rest, and you kind of got to be on a lot, even if it's a tough day. So for me, I think number one, man, it's I've surrounded myself by some really good people, and everybody that is in my band or that writes with me or anything is my best friends and people that I know I got their back through anything, and I know they got mine. So just keeping my people close has been a big thing, and making sure I'm checking in with them and vice versa. And the gym is really good for me.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's hard to come by, but we try to keep some weights in the trailer. That way, if there ain't one, you can at least get around and move a little. I guess coming from motocross world, my biggest outlet was my dirt bike, but I don't get much time to ride. So just any kind of physical activity and I can get out a little energy has always been great for me. I mean, I'm an advocate for therapy and things like that too. And a lot of men I grew up around, it was just like suck it up and be tough and don't talk about it. And
Right.
I've lost a lot of them too to different things. That I think
Yeah.
maybe if they had been a little more open, there might have been more help or hope for them. So, man, honestly, anything that will help keep me sharp, I try to lean into. Man, I'm not as good at it as I wish I was sometimes, but I'm really trying to learn and find balance with everything going on.
I mean, none of us are. And honestly, I really appreciate you for saying that, because it is difficult for a lot of men to just be open to therapy because a lot of us are grown up like, oh, we're men, we don't need that, we don't talk about feelings and stuff. And thank you so much for saying that, because I hope it changes, at least if it changes one person's idea about therapy, then you've
Yeah,
touched
man. Thank you for saying. I really hope people will give things like that a chance. I mean, being totally honest, I think a therapist is like a friend. You don't hang out with every person you meet. You might like them, but you got best friends and you got beer buddies, and
yeah.
you're not gonna go drinking with your therapist, obviously. But not everyone is for every person. So sometimes it does take a little dating around to try to find somebody that can talk your language or has been through
Yep.
something like you or whatever. But man, there is a lot of help out there if people's willing to take it, and
Yeah.
a good bit of it's free. A lot of it you just have to seek it out. So
Yep.
you
Yep.
know, just I just hope people won't let finances or the way they grew up keep them from being 2% better, because it goes a
Yep.
long way, man. 2% adds up over 10 years.
It sure does, man. Redferrin, thank you so much for opening up, and thank you for talking to
Yeah,
me.
man.
I know you're busy, man, so I'm going to let you go, but I appreciate you, and I can't wait to see you again in Sacramento.
Thank you so much, buddy. Can't wait to see y'all. We'll be back soon.